Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today we're doing something really fun. We are radiating well-being in the body with Diana Richardson, the author of Cool Sex, an essential young adult guide to loving mindful sex. I am so excited about this because I've got a young adult at home. How are you today, Diana? Welcome.
Well, hi, Christy. There you are, 8 hours behind me in time.
Yes, you're in Switzerland.
Yes.
You're coming to me from the future, I believe, or I'm coming to you from the past.
Yes.
Yes, Switzerland, where it's cold. And remind me of what part of Switzerland you are based in?
I'm not far from Bern.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I love Switzerland. It's my second home. And just Switzerland's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So you've got this book, Cool Sex, and you've got a TED Talk on it too. How exciting.
Yes, the TED Talk was called The Power of Mindful Sex. But, all the material, because I have written, this is now my 8th book, but it's all about bringing more awareness into the sexual exchange. And this is kind of the foundation of all my books and all, what I try and convey to people, young and old.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so why the notion of cool sex? We always think of hot sex.
Well, exactly for that reason, because there is this idea, this kind of imprinting that sex needs to be hot, and the hotter the better. However, that does lead to certain consequences. It is one of the reasons why premature ejaculation is so prevalent, because we basically get too hot in sex. And that means that the sex act is relatively short. And with women, it often means that they really don't have time to engage in the whole thing. It's
right.
Very frequently over before a woman is really warmed up. So it's a matter of, cool doesn't mean cold, and cool doesn't mean switched off. It means reducing the sexual temperature. Now, usually, we try and get it hotter and hotter. We believe we need to build up the intensity, but then sometimes that intensity is disempowering. So as soon as we feel excited, we build on that excitement. But really the way is to, monitor oneself, not in a negative way, but just keep an eye on the temperature. And when things start to get a little hot, you relax. And then you can slowly build again with the excitement. And in this way, you can actually stretch the lovemaking exchange quite substantially, for a length of time that both partners feel fulfilled and satisfied. Because for a man who suffers from premature ejaculation, and I do use the word suffer because what happens then in a man is that there is a lot of self-doubt.
Right.
And then anxiety whenever he approaches the girlfriend or gets close to sex, and there's so much anxiety, then again we have a premature ejaculation. And also for women, because many women think, there's something wrong with them because they have a different kind of
it's a different cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, a different speed to men. The female body is such that she needs to warm. She needs a little more time to get into things. And it's not a psychological thing. It's just we are different.
Yeah.
So, it is important for young people to know that there are alternatives. There's not just this one track. And actually, my motivation for writing this book was because many parents, I've been teaching couples for over 25 years, and many parents have come to me and said, "Oh my God, if only I had known this when I was younger." And also, we don't want our children to wait so long as we had to before they get this information. Mm-hmm. So that is what the motivation was. And, the other aspect is that when people are still young in the body, mm-hmm. and also, more fluid, it's sometimes easier for them to catch that thread, the cool thread, than older adults who've become pretty set in their ways and sometimes not so willing to experiment and play in the whole sexual field. So I do often have very young couples, very early 20s and so on, and they get it very fast. And I think it is important these days, with the prevalence of pornography. I mean, it's always been there, but it's so accessible online. So this is having quite an impact, on boys in terms of performance pressure, and we got to do that, and that can look quite intimidating. And then also for girls, so then go, oh, we've got to also do that. And, start pleasing and playing in an area where they feel pressured rather than relaxed. So, yeah, this was the motivation to write the book. And like I said, the material is not substantially different from previous books, because of course, if you're writing about sex, it can't be a different thing every book. There has to be a basis, body of material. But what I think is important, Christy, to say is that my experience is heterosexual. Mm-hmm. And I teach from experience. And of course, there is, a whole other community, gender orientation people, and this is, and gender fluidity and so on.
Yeah.
And I think this is still a body of work that needs to emerge from this community of people. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, the book does not address people from that community, mm-hmm. but at the same time, many principles can be incorporated.
Absolutely.
The mindfulness, the awareness, the
knowing your body.
Yes, relaxing, mm-hmm. Breathing, caressing, all these things are help. So, of course, genital-wise, in terms of heterosexuality, we have a specific genital connection. Mm-hmm. So, for sure, there's some specifics that might not apply, but general principles definitely can easily be embraced.
Absolutely. Yes. And so you've been doing this for quite some time. You said 25 years you've been involved in sex education. Why did you choose this field?
Well, it was more like it chose me rather than I chose it. Because really the whole thing has unfolded very organically. When I was like 31, now I'm 66, I started to explore myself with some inputs from different spiritual masters. Now, they weren't very specific inputs, they were general inputs. And so I started to incorporate that into my lovemaking, and I was just amazed what the difference it made. And then because anyway, I'm a body-oriented person, that I filled out these ways, with lots of very specific little small details with the body, which together make more like a body of work. So yeah, and then I experimented for 5 years very solidly.
Mm-hmm.
And then people started to come to ask me, because I was living in a community actually in India, and I found I could answer people's questions. And then I decided to write a book to see if I could put in words what I had experienced in the body. So that worked. And then I continued writing. And parallel to that, I started to teach, and that seemed to work. So, yeah, and it's engaged me solidly ever, since basically I was 31, but more actively, for 25 years in terms of teaching and books and so on.
Well, everyone's interested in sex. Everyone, I mean, it's something that is very universal and something that it's not just that. I mean, yes, it's natural and we come to it naturally, but there are ways to kind of hack it, I suppose.
Yes, and it's really a great insight that everybody is interested or everybody is involved, because we are born as sexual beings.
Mm-hmm.
And our languages are different, our diets are different, our climates are different, but what is not different is
It's
sex.
universal. Mm-hmm.
And like you say, we can hack it in different ways. And that is the thing, is that we are living in a highly sexual society. We imprinted the whole time, unconsciously, also visually, with so much advertising, and everything is on this sensation aspect. But in reality, there's very, very little sex education. There's might be biology taught, but that's very different.
Very different.
Yeah, to actually saying, look, hey, when you hug a person, this, when you kiss a person, this, when you stand like this, when you sit, so much we can do on little ways that impact our body globally.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely. And so what is the benefit then of this cool sex to the partners?
Well, basically, it keeps the connection.
Mm-hmm.
People feel it enhances the love, it deepens the love. And also, after the sex is over, there is still the loving thread between. And many, what is interesting to observe, that in the hot picture, when we kind of, come to a peak, build up energy, and then somehow, fall away from it, there's often a disconnection
Yes,
between
absolutely.
the partners.
Mm-hmm.
And so, 1 second you're like totally plugged in, and the next moment, you're kind of like thrown out. And you go, what is all that about? And because we are so focused on, or we think that having an orgasm is the reason we have sex, and we don't really look at the after effects.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start to look at the after effects, you go, oh, yeah, I do feel disconnected. I mean, it's a classic. We hear the jokes, men turning over to snore and so on. Um, and often women feel very at a loss, and can also lead to emotions like, abandonment and feeling alone and so
Rejection,
on. Rejection, exactly.
shame.
Yes, yes. So definitely, it really helps us to pave a way that is more fulfilling. And on the outside, you think, oh, a bit more cool, because we're so identified with the heat that cool sounds a bit boring. But you can, if you stay cool, you can really engage for a long time.
Right. Because
Yeah.
you don't burn out. There's this
Yes,
idea
exactly.
of burning out when it's too hot. So really this idea of cool sex is not to be like putting a damper on it or to throw cold water on it. It's more just to it sounds like to deepen, to strengthen the connection. and to be more mindful in your body. That's always a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. No, it really makes such a difference. And I see it again and again. Couples come to our seminars and you can feel the disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
honestly, within a few days of getting people into their bodies, their own bodies, because this is another kind of misunderstanding we have. Usually when we come together, regardless of your genders and whatever, we tend to be focused on the other person. We're not that connected with ourselves.
Right.
And so it's an extraordinary alchemy, but the moment you're more connected with yourself on the inside, that creates a connection with the other person. So this is why, I love your radiate wellness, and that's why I said radiate well being from the body, because if we can find, befriend the inner body, what I like to call it. And this just makes a huge more difference, because then your awareness is anchored within yourself. And then you, in that way, bring your awareness, bring your presence into the situation.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this sounds, I know in focusing on the body, that's physical aspect, of course, but it sounds like it's also more of a spiritual type of experience and maybe a soul type of experience.
These are kind of byproducts.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And so the way I teach people is very, very physical and body oriented.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the first thing I will tell people is take the awareness in and down, find a place in the body that you can feel easily, and use that as an anchor point. And if you don't find a place that you can feel easily, choose a place. So that you immediately get that inner reference. And then for sure, when you're coming from that, also, you scan your body, you soften tensions, you breathe deeply, and so on. So with these physical things, one does access other layers, of the reality of the being. So yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And increasing oxytocin, increasing the feel good chemicals, the ones that give us the feeling of connection. That's wonderful. So you've been working in this field. You've written other books about the topic of sex. So again, why did you feel that it was necessary to write a book specifically for young people?
Well, because of this, imprinting that is so strong about hot sex, that we receive indirectly. It's not something we're conscious of receiving.
You don't
And
go looking for it necessarily.
yeah, and because young ones are still relatively fluid, and because it's good when you're young to know already that there's an alternative.
Right. And now, what age is your book geared toward?
Well, we say, I did this with a girlfriend. She was a student of mine, and she just had a good way of pulling the material together. So, we that's why her name is on the book, to acknowledge her part.
Yes.
So we say 14 to 25, but to be honest, any adult can read it, because it's like a synopsis. And in my workshops, I have the book on display, because it's been in 3 other languages for quite a while. It's in German, French, and Spanish. But I see the older participants reading this and just say, wow, that's a really, good little book. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. When I was growing up, I was a member of the Unitarian Church, raised Unitarian, and we had a wonderful program about sex, and it seemed to almost go this far, but not quite. And I think it really made an impression on me, and I think it's important for young people just to be more mindful about it. I think when the hormones are raging and they're curious, there's a tendency to rush into things when sex is a lot more important than that.
Yes, yes. And that's really a blessing for your life that you got that through your church, some guidance.
I would imagine that there would be some who are of the opinion that a book like this would be encouraging young people to promiscuity or making bad choices. What would you answer to that?
Absolutely not, because they are going to engage at some point. It's not, and if it is, then at least it's in a mindful way, because sooner or later they're going to come across the situation, and at least they have some tools in the hand, and another outlook. Certainly, I don't think there should be any fears really about promiscuity. It might even help people to respect more.
That's my thinking about this.
Yes.
When younger people, teens, and of course your book is geared toward, I think, 15 to 25. And so the younger people on that spectrum might look at it as more of a mindful act rather than just a rush to lose virginity or a rush to, having these experiences.
Right. And because on one level, aside for the procreative part of sex, we do see it a little bit like entertainment.
Especially for younger generations, yes.
Yes, and we do it for fun, and so and there might be young people who read that and go, "Oh, this is rubbish," but this is because they have not yet lived the whole sexual journey. Where retrospectively you can go, "Oh, in your 40s, you can go, oh, I wish I had this when I was 20." So.
And you're receiving very good feedback from some of the readers, the younger readers about.
Yes. Now, when people try and experiment and are playful and at ease, it is remarkable what one observes, what one experiences, and actually how good you can feel after an exchange that involves mindfulness, or the word I like to use more is awareness, the older word. That we start really, we don't just go into mechanical, we don't just go into automatic, but we, anchor in our bodies and we feel, so that we're working more on the sense level, not on the sensation level. Sensation is fine, but what we really need to do is work on our senses and our sensitivity and start to pay attention to the very small, fine things that happen in the body. Because one of our things that happens to us is that we just want it bigger and better and more and more. So with a lot of sensation, slowly this dulls the senses, dulls the sensitivity, because the body can only take so much sensation.
Right, absolutely. Pretty soon you max out on it. But then if you're only focusing on one sensation, one particular sensation, you're missing out on all the rest of it, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. And this is really why it's important to broaden the senses aspect, and not just, go for intensity, but also, like the very fine, good feelings in the body that do, sex is magical, really, that, it's incredible, the amazing things one can experience through this interaction.
Right. Well, the body is a miraculous machine. And the things that have to happen in the body to have a climax, much less to conceive, is just amazing. All of the things that are working in conjunction together.
Well, yes. I'm I love your engagement with the body and your joy of the body, because I'm the same. It's just like, what an incredible instrument.
It is
And
amazing.
yeah. And
It's really magic.
how many millions of years it took for us to evolve into that, unless we just came down from a star, as are also possible. We don't know.
Not really anything out at this point. But how much of our bodies do we really take for granted? That, for example, erections, that's going to work every time. The lubrication works going to work every time. But when there is some sort of dysfunction, then we're painfully aware of that. But, if we can just be aware of how well our body works, I think that's important.
Yes, I mean, you're so on track, Christy. It's great talking to you, because basically, all the education is about the mind.
Right.
There's very little body education,
Right.
aside from sex education. It could be 2 hours of sport a week, but that's very competitive often. So essentially, often it's like our body is there to carry our minds around, and we only notice it when there's a disturbance, when there's pain, when we have problems. So we don't have an ongoing sense and connection to our body that is more in the pleasure, the well-being, on that level. Yes.
Well, because many sex education classes do focus on the physiology. This is what happens in the body. This is where your blood goes.
Right. And nothing about the atmosphere that all happens in. And yeah.
And about the connection.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that. So really are there any differences between this book, Cool Sex, and the other books that you've written? It's like, why did you choose to write this one at this particular time with this particular idea?
Well, to be honest, ever since I've been involved in sex education, I have known that it's the young ones that we must start with. All my workshops are primarily, mid-30s to mid-70s. Like I said, we do have younger people. So there's always been this thing, we've got to start with the young ones. We've got to start with the young ones, because that is where it makes a difference. Now, I was relatively young, 31, but I could easily have been a lot younger, because in a life's journey, one does many uncaring things to one's body.
Yes.
Because one has certain ideas and so on. So it has been in the back of my mind for a long time. But in between, I get offers from publishers, write a book for women, write a book for men, write a book called Slow Sex. And interestingly, it was very, very difficult to find a publisher for this
Is that so?
young adult book in the English world.
Okay. Oh, I see.
Yes, which was interesting, because Germany, no problem. France, no problem. Spain, no problem. But in the English world, it was difficult. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions or anything, but it does say something, about, I don't know,
Culture,
the Englishness, or a general reticence about bringing sex in the open. But, there is also the aspect that publishers do have certain markets.
Right.
And the young adult market is not a very developed market, certainly maybe in fiction.
Yes, certainly in fiction.
Yeah. So that's why I'm so happy now I can retire from writing.
Okay, so if you're not writing, then what do you like to do? What would you like to occupy your time?
No, I'm teaching a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I do 11, 12 courses a year.
Even during COVID?
No, this year some were cancelled. But we did manage, I had 11 retreats organized for this year, and I managed to do 7. Now, I don't know what's going to happen next year. So I am teaching people directly, which is really a joy. It's beautiful just to see people fall in love and, you know, touch spaces that they hadn't touched since they were young. And yeah. And also sitting at the computer a long time is just no good anymore. You know, I could do it when I was younger, but now at this age, it's like you get the aches and pains very quickly. Yeah.
Have you thought of doing your workshops online?
Well, this is, of course, the next step, you know, especially with the pressure increasing, you know, with COVID. I'm working on it. I have a little resistance in the sense that because my work is so directly with the body, that I like to have people with me in the here and now, in a room, can be 40 and 50 of us together. Everybody stays in the partnership. There's no swapping or nudity or anything uncomfortable. Because then I can really work with people's bodies.
Mm.
You know, just through little inputs and suggestions. Now I just have to find a way to translate that into online. And I'm sure it's possible. I just haven't had time. But I think it's coming. Yeah, yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, your workshop sounds like an amazing just opportunity for people to explore sex in a different way. It sounds wonderful. Are they all for hetero couples, or do you have a mixture?
No, it is for hetero, and it's really because a lot of the information is genital specific.
Yes, I understand. Mm-hmm.
So we just have to be practical, and it's not like we want to exclude anybody, but it's simply our experience, and because of this genital connection.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then that makes perfect sense. I'm sure there are communities who have their own approach, and there may be similar workshops in the homosexual community.
Yes. No, I'm sure. And in fact, I have a long time ago in Mexico City, I did a workshop with a lot of gay couples.
Yes.
And they were all men, and they really benefited from more presence, more awareness, more sensitivity. So that encouraged me, and this was already in 1993.
Oh,
that I
my.
did that. Yes. So I have always known that the general principles apply. And then I did write a book for women.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, I guess I wrote that book maybe around 2003, 2004. And by that time, I had women write to me about some of the experiences from my using information in my previous book. Yes. So in the women's book, I was able to include a chapter on same-sex, for women.
For women. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But like I said, it is a body of work that needs to emerge from the people who are engaged in it.
Wonderful.
Otherwise, I'm just guessing. Not, in the specifics, but in the generals, right. We're all the same, so right. That's...
well, especially when you're talking of you're speaking of mindfulness of the body and awareness of its physiological responses and awareness of your feelings. These are universal.
Yes, exactly. And in that sense, I often say to participants, okay, I'm sitting up here, or my partner and I are sitting up here, and it looks like we're different to you because we're sitting here and not there. But the only reason we can sit here is because we're all the same. And, also what I do in the workshops very often is ask people to put up their hands. Do you feel this? Or is that your experience? And 95% of people will always put up their hands. And the reason I do that is to show, make it clear that we are all the same. So often, as far as sex goes, there's a lot of shame and feeling of privacy, and it's too intimate. And we carry these little burdens or big burdens, thinking we're alone, but actually, we're all pretty much the same. So when we can see that, it's like, everybody's hands up, you just kind of relax and okay, it's not just me.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness has a subscription-based premium content Facebook group? Think of it like the premium version of this free podcast. In this premium Facebook group, you can find great content like replays of online classes, meditations on angels, chakras, mindfulness, and more, guest speakers, mini classes, polls. Plus, you'll be the first to know of guests that we have scheduled for the podcast and can submit questions for them. You get all of this great content for one low monthly price, and the first month is half off. You can subscribe by going to radiatewellnesscommunity.com/shop. Click the subscriptions button and you're in. Also, while I have your attention, wherever you're listening to this free podcast, if you could just do us a couple of favors, please. One is go to hit the subscribe or follow button. Then you'll be notified of all of the episodes we have coming out each week. Also, please rate and review. It sounds really simple, but it helps us to grow our audience when people are looking for great podcasts. And when we grow our audience, we can do bigger and better things and bring you even more great guests. So please do those couple of things, and that will help us grow this audience and this podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
It's not exactly. There is this notion of shame prevalent, I would say, probably in the English-speaking communities, but I mean, it's universal. And, that can make us feel a lot more awkward and reticent and inward rather than, playful and experimental in what we do. I want to turn back to the book, and I wanted to know if someone wants to make a start with cool sex, what's the first thing? What is like the primer that you would recommend to go to?
Well, definitely start to bring more focus to your own body. And not only in relation to somebody else, but in your own life. Start to notice how you stand, how you sit, have some presence in the body, more alignment, through the spine and so on, to watch your breath. Also, if you come into interaction with somebody, if you're moving or touching, to do it more consciously. There's lots of little things that a person can do, and definitely also more active things like move the body, do some exercise routines, or gym, not gym in a external sense, but to start feeling well in the body. That's always, that's the big thing. So, and once you start with yourself, then of course you can start to pull that in to when you are with somebody else. Like, for instance, if you hug somebody and all your weight is more or less collapsed onto one leg, that affects your energy. If you stand with your weight 50-50, you have a different quality of presence. If your shoulders are all tight and then you suddenly soften them, you'll suddenly notice, whoa, I can feel myself and I can feel the vibration between us. Breathing, stay with the breath. We breathe, forget about the breathing. Luckily, it continues.
So that's wonderful. That's a great way to get started, just to notice your occupation of space, where you tend to occupy space.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. And that's right, because we are dimensional. And if we can have a feeling of the sides, a feeling of the front and the back, and the spine, and the body is symmetrical. And it's symmetrical for a reason. We put it out of symmetry through our bad posture and so on. But as soon as we get into alignment,
Mm-hmm.
immediately that empowers our bodies. We can feel it. But if we're out of alignment, kind of collapsed, it's very hard to feel your body. So these days, I see so many people on the mobile phones, but the posture is so bad when
Right.
they're doing that. So even if you did that same thing with better posture, like more upright, not leaning like this, that'll make a difference. I see also many people carry rucksacks, especially school students, and what that does to the posture.
Mm-hmm.
It hangs off the body. People tend to move more from the head rather than from the belly and solar plexus. So there's so many little ways that one can help oneself. I mean, crossing the legs.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you feel inside your body with your legs crossed, you'll see, oh gosh, it feels very uncomfortable in my sex center. But the moment I open the legs, uncross them, it's like, oh, that feels a lot better. Crossing the arms over the solar plexus. We do that, for comfort and, but sometimes for protection. But actually, if you feel inside, you go, oh no, I feel a little congested. So I work a little, on all these more very practical things that do have quite an impact on the inner body and the body energy and the feeling of wellness and the
Yes.
capacity to radiate wellness. Yeah.
It's all about. Well, it's using the entire body. And when we're talking about sex, rather than just using parts of the body, we're incorporating the whole of our being.
Yes, yes. And like if you relax your shoulder, that has an impact on the body energy globally. If you relax your feet. So we tend to divide the body in parts, but it's like we were talking earlier, this magical mystery.
It's amazing what happens in the body.
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing that it's just a miracle that we breathe, that our heart beats, everything's working together like a clock. And of course, you're in Switzerland there, and that's the home of the famous clocks. But our body is just you throw one thing out of balance and the whole thing can come out of balance. Anyway, I can nerd out about that quite a lot, but I want to focus on Cool Sex, the book. Can you give an example of an exercise that is in the book?
Well, there's several exercises. One is like really scanning the body and relaxing tensions, through tightening up parts and then relaxing parts. There's another really good one for the legs to energize the pelvis, opening the legs, closing the legs very slowly, using sound. And all this is, just little things to help people more into their body. So there's several also for, women to have more awareness in the breasts. And, also for men to have more awareness in the pelvic region, the perineum, and to send good energy to these places, to invest them with inner life, we can say. And this all helps to increase presence and be connected to the body in the moment, because the body is the only thing that really exists in the moment.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you hear from spiritual masters, be in the present, or it's very common these days, be in the present, be in the moment. But how do we do that? And we do that through the body. There's really no other way. Because otherwise mind is thinking and it floats away, and Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Now, is this one book enough to change people's experiences with sexuality? And if it's not, then what else would be needed to change their experience?
Look, it's a good start. And it really depends on the individual and their connection to their body. And certainly things I've mentioned already, like, do some exercises, or like a beautiful thing is Tai Chi, for instance, or Qigong. These more softer exercises, not more inner exercises. Um, Self-massage, I find incredible.
Sure.
Massage your own body. Get other people to massage, exchange with your partner, but because through massage, we really get to liberate tensions and fears from the body. We awaken all the good, delicious feelings in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan of self-massage. So people, like I say, it depends on individuals.
Right.
It is a good start because a lot of our ideas about sex are in the mind. So really we have to change our minds. So this book really helps to change the mind. And if you have a partner and have an adventurous nature, then you start to put it into practice, and then you get the body experiences. But I think it is extremely healthy to get an idea, that changes the mind. And often I say, in our workshops, really what we need to do is change the mind, because the body is perfect. The body has its own intelligence. It's our minds that are forcing on our bodies a certain idea. And then, of course, the body, very cooperative, it goes with you, but it's not actually the choice of the body. So changing the mind is an important aspect.
Right. Because the body responds to the mind.
Yes,
The
yes.
energy we put into it.
Whereas if you, start to trust the own body, feel into your own body, it will flow on its own. It will move, it'll make a movement on its own without the mind. And those are beautiful moments, when the body responds, when the body starts to speak, rather than the mind pushing the body.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. I think there has to be some sort of level of trust between the mind and the body, if that makes any sense. That the body needs to trust that the mind needs to trust that the body's going to do what it's going to do, rather than trying to force the river. Perhaps I'm getting that wrong, but it seems like there's a little dance there.
Yes, and no, it is true. We don't trust our bodies because we don't really know our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you start this process of being more aware in the body, then you can start to trust it.
Yes.
If we feel if there's a basic disconnect between mind and body, then one doesn't have a foundation. And without the foundation, then there's no real trust, or you don't trust yourself. So it is, it is really worthy of exploration for all of us, regardless of our age.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the oldest person ever come to a workshop, she was 78 and the man was 82. Now that is just amazing that at that age they came to the workshop, and he was so amazing. He just said, "This is the most important 7 days of my life," it's really awesome.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and it's just so easy, especially around sex. We can either, like, I got it down, I know about sex, or we have this disconnect where we don't want to engage with it because it has been unsatisfying, or there have been challenging times in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
And we tend to hold those challenging times in the body as well, and
That's right.
tend to hold on to the trauma of it sometimes. So that can be a bit of a challenge. I'm sure your workshops are very engaging and lively, very transformative, I would imagine.
Yes, they are indeed. They are. We ourselves, because I teach the couples with my partner, sometimes we're just going like, wow, it's just so magical what a little bit of awareness does. And
Awareness is everything.
awareness is everything.
Truly.
And awareness is also like the foundation for love. Excuse
It
me.
is.
It's just another one of these alchemies. The more awareness we invest in the body, in our surroundings, in relation to people, this creates the ambiance of love and the experience of love in many ways. So, yeah, the body is such a gift.
A lovely gift. My goodness, you've written so many books. I'm looking at your website, loveforcouples.com. It's also, let's see, there is, loveforcouples.com. And we've got a list of your books. There are so many. You've written many on tantric principles. So that's very interesting. It's mostly I've mostly seen work from men on this subject, but no, you've got several: tantric sex and menopause, the heart of tantric sex, tantric orgasm for women, tantric love, and tantric sex for men, as well as slow sex and tantric love. Oh my goodness, so many wonderful books on the subject.
You're sweet, Christy. Yes. There's a lot of misunderstanding about this word tantra or within the tantric field. But basically, it's about, the way I understand it, it's about awareness.
Yeah.
So, that is what I'm sharing with people in the workshops and through the books. And it's not a technique. Often people think a whole bunch of techniques, but it's not. It's awareness. It's changing you. It's not you doing something, switch on, switch off. It's, investing yourself.
So it's not one practice, it's a body of it.
That's right. Yeah. And a lot of the practice is the awareness, which is not really a practice. It's, you're aware or you're not. And the more you can bring awareness in, it's enriching on all levels of life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, practicing mindfulness is awareness. And I just kind of chuckle whenever we talk about practicing mindfulness, because shouldn't we be mindful all the time rather than just when we're practicing it?
Well, that's what I often say in the workshops. It's not switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off. It's switch on and stay on, using your body, feeling your body when you're cooking, when you're driving. Like now I'm aware I've crossed my legs. I unconsciously, so the minute I notice that, I open them again. I bring my feet parallel. So it's just this ongoing process of observing and watching the body and seeing how quickly we have little habits and we go into them, and you catch yourself and you come back. And so it's actually fun. It's not strenuous. It's not like now I sit down and practice. Right. It's, my body is with me all the time. And how can we use it as a tool, to get more switched on?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Diana, is there anything else that we haven't covered, we haven't talked about? We've talked about so many things. Anything that you feel just bears repeating or we need to bring awareness to?
I think we've done really beautifully together. You've been so inspiring to talk to, and of course, it's a subject we can talk about endlessly. But I do feel we've covered the major aspects.
Major points.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so again, the book. Yes, go ahead.
One area that's a whole other investigation is about, and it's mentioned in all my books, including this Cool Sex book, is about emotions and feelings. To learn to distinguish between those two states. Because what happens between people, and especially couples, are these phases of arguing and fighting. But very often our injuries are from the past. And what happens is that those get triggered and come into the present and disturb our love in the present.
Yeah.
We don't recognize it's from the past. So that is a very helpful thing to be aware of. I actually wrote one book specifically about that, tantric love, feelings versus emotions. And there are certain symptoms that show when we are in past, like immediately you feel disconnected. It's just one word or one incident and you feel disconnected, or you can't look your partner in the eye, or you suddenly feel collapsed and it's a bit self-righteous, your mind goes bananas. So if we can start to recognize these little symptoms and realize that those belong to our past and feelings that were not allowed in the present when those things happened. So it's a bit complex to engage in that now. Maybe we do another talk sometime.
Maybe we do another talk. I was just thinking the same thing. You've read my mind, because we do need to know the difference between a feeling and emotion. And I had never really considered that. I mean, but that is a very real thing. So yes, I would love to have you back on to talk about feelings versus emotions. That would be wonderful. And again, the book is Cool Sex, an essential young adult guide to loving, fulfilling sex. The author is Diana Richardson, and the website is livinglove.com, or it can also be loveforcouples.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, Diana, and I look forward to having you on again.
Super, Christy. The time we did for an hour, and it just
flew by.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure and a real joy to talk to you because of your love and engagement of wellness in the body.
Well, I'm very happy. And my cat approves too. If you're watching on YouTube, my cat has been making an appearance.
Yes, I noticed that. I thought she was all over you. Sweet.
This is the peril from working from home. To have your animals all over you. Well, again, Diana, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a sweet treasure.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.